More big signings around the NFL. Not only Christian McCaffrey extended through 2027, but the Cleveland Browns re-upping their brain trust, head coach, GM, all that and more coming from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we love it when you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right. A lot of signings happening. GM's busy. I know it's not draft season, but some deals happening, and even some GMs signing new deals and extensions with their teams. Let's start with Christian McCaffrey and his extension with the San Francisco 49ers. 2 years added to his deal that takes it through 2027 now. And we've gotten a lot of questions about this and comments really on both sides. And this is what's funny about the running back market in the NFL. Some people are like, man, how can Justin Jefferson get 35 a year, and we're going crazy about a running back getting what was reported as a 2-year, $19 million per extension for how much Christian McCaffrey has done for his franchise versus Justin Jefferson, right? If you look at total yardage, and some people would say Christian McCaffrey more valuable potentially to the 49ers offense than Justin Jefferson is to the Minnesota Vikings offense. And then you get questions and comments like, how could a team pay a running back who's already under contract for 2 years and add 2 more years and sign him 4 years, which is a marathon? That's an eternity away for a running back, and into his age 31 season, into his 30s. Why would a team do that when a running back's already under contract? And so I see both sides of this, and I think it really underscores where the running back market is. First of all, I want to talk more about specifically the Christian McCaffrey contract and why it does make such sense for it's a win-win contract, and the 49ers really don't lose any flexibility with this contract. So if you're worried about Christian McCaffrey at age 31 with all the touches he's had, led the league the last couple of years, played nearly 40 games the last 2 years on late playoff runs for the 49ers. The 49ers, so Christian McCaffrey was signed through 2025 already, Matt. And the 49ers essentially guaranteed, because that money there was no more guarantees left on his contract because all of his signing stuff was paid in Carolina, where he was already the highest paid running back, and nobody had gone past him being the highest paid running back in the NFL. So he remains the highest paid running back in the NFL. That goes up a little bit, but doesn't go up to $19 million per year as what was reported, by the agents to the insiders when the deal came down. So the 2 years that McCaffrey had left on his deal, no guarantees left. Essentially, those were turned into signing bonus and guarantees, and now those are guaranteed. But let's be honest, Christian McCaffrey was going to get paid that money anyway by the 49ers.
He's making the team.
Yeah. He broke his leg tomorrow and missed all season. They were still going to bring him back in 2025. He was going to make all that money. So essentially, that was turned into guarantees. A couple more dollars thrown in there, just a little bit of a bump. And then the new money for the 2026 and 2027 seasons. But again, now the 49ers can get out of the contract at that point if they want to. So what it turns out is instead of getting $14 million per year, it's now more like a 4-year deal at about $15.5 million, which is still top of the market running back money, but it's not resetting the market. It's not crazy. It's not $19 million per year as reported. And the 49ers, if they want, at the same time, they could have already gotten out of the contract, after a couple of years, after 2025, they can get out of it if they want. And they can really get out of it before the 2027 season, the final year of the deal. And in fact, it looks almost like it's likely that it's only going to be a 3-year contract and not a 4-year contract because of the cap savings that could happen. And now it could be a cut. It could be a trade. Maybe you could just restructure again. Maybe Christian McCaffrey, which I think the 49ers should do, Matt, is transition into the post Debo wideback role to save his body and elongate his career and convert more of his touches from carries into receptions. And potentially that makes him even more valuable. And maybe in 2027, whatever that cap number is a bargain because he's almost more of a wide receiver. And we already know where that crazy money is. So that's where the Christian McCaffrey contract is. I think, you tip your cap to McCaffrey, he gets a little bit more money. The agent gets to parade around and say, yay, 19 mil per year. That's not really the reality. But player happy, 49ers remain flexible. Christian McCaffrey sticking around. Great for all sides.
Yeah, well said. And of course, you're all over this, the Niners stuff. And just to rewind a minute, I mean, I think most of our listeners know that comparing Jefferson and McCaffrey really is apples to oranges, but it is noteworthy that both have set the market at their respective positions and are basically the best players at their respective positions and super valuable and all that good stuff. As for McCaffrey becoming more receiver, even going forward, most people in the know and in the league thought he was the best slot receiver in his draft class. It's coming out of Stanford, and he's proven that in the league as well. I don't think Debo will probably be there next year, so that's a great call that between Debo and Pearsall and Jennings and all those guys, you're not going to be short on receivers, even if Kittle happens to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
Said a million times, you could draft, although the Niners are bad at this, but you could draft a 3rd round running back or a 4th round running back to do the brunt of the heavy lifting. My last question for you, though, is I just didn't see this coming from a global perspective that I look at the Niners. Did you know this was on the horizon?
So McCaffrey's getting married like next week, I think it is. And maybe he just needed money to pay for that. So he wanted that signing bonus, right? But some people there was like, oh, yeah, he's holding out because he wasn't at OTAs. And McCaffrey goes to everything. Like he is a grinder. Yeah. He came to first day of voluntary stuff last year and was like going 100%. Like they had to say, hey, calm down, dude. Like that's how he's wired, which is why he's so great. But the fact that he wasn't there was like, okay, this is interesting. It's not a nothing thing. And it was like, is it a contract? Is it is he just, getting ready for his wedding that's going to happen? And it turns out it was a contract thing. And he was already the highest paid. So that's what's weird. It's like, you can't walk in the room and say, hey, I need to be the highest paid running back in the NFL. You already are. Right. But he's a big part of the offense, probably deserved a little something. And it's almost as much of a restructure from the 49ers standpoint with a little bit of extra icing on the cake than it is, big new money or anything like that. But that's why it's kind of a win-win and everyone's happy in the end.
But it didn't free up enough money that the Ayuk shoe will drop tomorrow.
Well, with Ayuk and McCaffrey both, the cap number in 2024 actually gets lower. So yeah, they did free up more money on the cap this year because the non-guaranteed base salary got converted to signing bonus in 2024, and that gets spread out throughout the contract. And for Brandon Ayuk, who's on his 5th-year option, if whatever deal they do starts now and wipes out that 5th-year option, and the same thing happens, then they'll create even more space. So they don't need more space to sign Brandon Ayuk. I think this is about creating space for rolling over into next year when they really have to pay more guys, and all those contracts they're already paying are getting a little bit higher. That's my thought, and that's what they did last year. They cleared some space, and everyone's like, "Oh, what move are they going to do?" No, they're just rolling over cap into the following season. I think that's
no one thinks in that way. Right. You make a lot of moves now because they make sense, and then you just put money in the bank for another day. And
I think for McCaffrey, there was no guarantees. So if something catastrophic happened, the Niners could have walked away after the season if they wanted to from his contract. So getting the guarantees back in there was probably something that him and his agent wanted, just to make sure that there was skin in the game and there was guaranteed contract out there for the next couple of years.
Got that wedding looming too. I mean, how else are you going to pay for it? Right.
I can imagine what that wedding with two famous people costs. And mine, I'm still paying for mine. That feels like, So,
I didn't know he has a famous spouse.
She, Olivia Culpo is, I believe, I think she's a model, maybe an actress. But I know she is
somebody people know that we don't.
Yeah, beautiful human being that people know who she is, and I think she is an actress and a model. Is I believe she was Miss Rhode Island, USA. In 2012, then Miss Universe in 2012. And so there you go.
Maybe she has some influencer to her as well. Who knows?
I'm sure her Instagram has 1 million followers, maybe more than Christian McCaffrey. Next, let's talk another contract that's happening. Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, extensions with the Cleveland Browns. Justin Jefferson versus Randy Moss, rookie head coaches, and a whole lot more in the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time. When you download the Game Time app, our listeners get a special offer. And when it comes to Game Time, it makes getting tickets to any event you want faster and easier. NBA Finals tickets, yep, get those faster and easier. Baseball, WNBA, NHL playoffs. You circling some of those games on the NFL calendar that was recently released. You want to see some of those games? Absolutely. You can find those tickets or any concert, comedy show, theater event near you. Killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and Game Time's lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying all of those tickets. And I love the view from your seat. You pull up the seat on your phone, and before you buy the ticket, it's got a panoramic view. So you move your phone around and you're looking around exactly as it would look if you're sitting in those seats. So you know what it's going to look like before you buy, and no surprise fees at checkout with the all-in pricing feature at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry getting extensions. And I find this very interesting because the Cleveland Browns haven't been a franchise of, winning and stability in my lifetime. According to Tom Pelissero.
Been there, done it. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been in that building. And a lot of the people that were on the job when you were in the building weren't there very long, right?
Nope.
That's what happens with the Cleveland Browns. And according to Tom Pelissero, the last Browns coach to make it to a fifth season was Bill Belichick. Stefanski is entering year 5 now and is now signed up and inked beyond that. So Stefanski going to pass up the great Bill Belichick. And I didn't even remember Bill Belichick. So, I wasn't paying that close of attention then because we're going back to early 90s now?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah, early to mid 90s is when Belichick was with the Cleveland Browns. I didn't realize he was there for 5 years. I thought that was a shorter stint.
Yeah, I do think, well, I don't want to talk about Belichick with the Browns too much, but a lot of people thought he was turning the corner, and that was one of the first instances of this organization canning a coach too soon. But there's been a million since, and the quarterbacks and the coaches and GMs and entry-level scouts named Matt Williamson did not last long at all, and I do think that this organization is maybe taking a page from the rest of the division, especially the Steelers, but Baltimore and Cincy. I mean, these are stable organizations. And I think that goes a long way when you're competing in the hardest division in the league. Now, Stefanski won Coach of the Year. We talked about GM ranks and things yesterday, and I do think this ownership is very aggressive with getting them analytics folks, giving them all the money they need. But I think quarterback aside, you could say the Browns might have the best roster in the league. I mean, but there's that elephant in the room, much like Russell Wilson with Denver. This Watson thing is sort of catastrophic at the moment, but apparently they're not going to blame. Maybe ownership said, hey, we're trading for Watson. It's not up to you guys, and I'll take the blame. I don't know.
You're onto something with firing people too soon. And I wonder if we'd be talking about an extension for Browns GM Matt Williamson if they wouldn't have fired that right now.
This whole hand to be full of rings. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Brady who? Right.
No, that wouldn't have happened for sure. That dynasty would have gone a different direction. Matt Williamson had a better grade. He had a 5th round grade on Tom Brady.
Right. We just snagged him, a little earlier. Right.
What was your aspiration, Matt? Your career aspiration? Like, did you say, okay, I'm here now? Back then, when you're doing recruiting, you're doing scouting in college, you go to the NFL as a scout, where you're like, okay, I've got my eye on this position that's 2 spots ahead of me, or were you like, I am going to run a franchise and win Lombardis?
To be honest, I was just grateful to be in the league at that point. And I felt a lot like a rookie player that was just totally swimming. Like, I didn't see OTAs coming. Like, everything just seemed like it happened quick. I saw ghosts. You know what I mean? Like, it was 1 year in.
You're the Sam Darnold of front office people.
Exactly. It's like, I'm just going to learn everything I possibly can. I'm going to try to keep my mouth shut in meetings. But when they ask me my opinion and guys I scouted, I'll exactly tell you what I thought. But I just wanted to see how this thing went after a year. And frankly, I think I would have been much better at my job in year 2 because I understood the calendar and the pace and the travel and things like that. That is nothing compared to a player, of course. But it was pretty clear, though. I mean, when we were by like week 10 and Butch Davis got fired halfway through the season, aspirations kind of went out the door. It was, like, I can be the best scout in this building. I'm still not going to get kept.
I want to go to YouTube where there's a couple of questions about Justin Jefferson's contract, since we're talking about contracts here divvied out this offseason. Evo Man says the NFL will go bankrupt eventually. The money is past ridiculous. This comes out at around $700,000 every week for 4 years. That's about the Justin Jefferson contract. And then David says QBs get crazy money, so paying an edge or a left tackle is where this kind of money should go. Talking about a wide receiver, you can double down or even bracket him, and you are not going to get production anywhere close to that value. Talking about paying wide receivers just philosophically in the NFL. What do you think about those two ideas as it pertains to paying wide receivers in the NFL?
I'm pretty certain, and I'm not an economist, that the NFL will go bankrupt soon. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
That's for sure not going to happen. Well, I mean, if you look at NBA contracts, right? NBA plays a lot more games, obviously, but and there's fewer guys to pay, so there's a lot of reasons why the economics are different. But man, there's role players getting what Justin Jefferson just got in the NBA. Like,
it's guaranteed too, right?
Yeah, exactly. 100% guaranteed contract, 140 million contracts. There's a bunch of those in the league, and they're not star players. They're the casual fan might not even realize, So and the
baseball is even stronger, right? I mean,
right, baseball as well. So the NFL is doing a good job of actually keeping pay to the point where it feels like it's getting higher and higher. But for what the NFL makes and how valuable these franchises are and how valuable these TV deals are, and the NFL is king. They're not going bankrupt anytime soon, and that's why we're seeing the salary cap go up so fast, so often now, especially post pandemic, and it's going to keep going. And $35 million a year is not going to seem like all that much probably by the end of Justin Jefferson's contract.
Yeah, especially now that you've got the betting sites involved and Netflix and all these different people adding money to the pot, international stuff on the horizon. This isn't asked, but I think an 18-game schedule is right around the corner as well. I mean, like, the revenue streams are turning into revenue floods. I mean, it's getting more and more. So don't worry about the NFL or the owners. They'll be just fine. Now, in terms of linemen versus receivers, I do think there's actually, you should listen to this because I'd listened to it this morning. The latest Move the Sticks podcast, they interview the Niners offensive line coach, and he says, I would pay guys to touch the ball. I can find third, fourth round guards. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, but the Niners aren't like everybody else. They don't ask as much out of their linemen. Everything comes out quick. But it was an interesting interview. I, for the most part, disagree. I mean, I believe no matter what position, special players you don't let leave. And Justin Jefferson's a special player. There's special safeties. There's special guards. There's special nose tackles that if you're special, and that word doesn't get thrown around easily.
And special running backs. Like, that's kind of the McCaffrey argument. McCaffrey's higher on the pecking order than Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk's going to make a lot more money than Christian McCaffrey. So you might at some point sit back and say, well, now wait a second. And we scheme this part of it open. Which part can we not scheme open? And the 49ers spend a lot on their defensive line and do have one of the most expensive left tackles in the NFL too. But the rest of the offensive line around that left tackle, they're drafting and developing and just trying to plug in tough, smart guys and figure that out.
I'm more in the camp of I'm going to spend resources on big people rather than little people. But like, I don't have a problem with the Steelers giving Minkah Fitzpatrick, top of the line safety money, or, I mean, even though safeties are quote replaceable. If you're a special player, you give them special money. But a lot of that comes down to scheme. I mean, Shanahan can get away with a big time left tackle. I mean, that's what Miami's doing with Armstead, or trying, and then a bunch of pieces and parts and help them and get the ball out quick and, big time playmakers. Or I got a kick out of, I think this was the same conversation for Move the Sticks. You look at Peyton Manning's career. He had Tarek Glenn, who was a big-time left tackle. He had Saturday, and then it was revolving doors at the rest of his linemen because he was so smart. And like every first-round pick in Indy was on a running back, a tight end, or a receiver. I mean, even guys like Joseph Adai and Dallas Clark and Anthony Gonzalez that people don't remember, let alone Marvin and Wayne and, Edge and those guys. So I think it depends a lot on your system and quarterback too.
Yeah, so the answer is kind of it depends. Difference-making players, you should pay them at those different positions, and maybe there is some truth to figuring out some other things. I would go quarterback, D-line, and then figure out the rest and figure out where there's enough money to pay everybody else. I think D-line is I would for sure be paying over wide receivers.
Me too. And I'd be paying O-line coaches and D-line coaches almost
O-line
like
coaches
coordinators
too. I love hearing that from my O-line coach too. If you're, if you're the 49ers and they're saying, hey,
give me some fourth-round picks. I'll make it work.
Smart guys compete. I'll find 5.
Yeah.
Tackles is a little bit more difficult because,
it is.
Guards and centers didn't say tackle. So we'll see post Trent Williams if they're able to plug in a bunch of mid-round guys that might get more difficult.
But I've said this now for 20 years that when in doubt, I'm going to add an extra D lineman. I want hockey lines of D linemen of all shapes and sizes. When in doubt, I don't know what they give me a D lineman.
Randy Moss versus Justin Jefferson, the first 4 years of their career, Matt. This is an interesting one. And I don't have the user in front of me who asked us this question, but statistically, I just like before I looked up the numbers, I was like, well, Randy Moss clearly is going to be the answer for me here. The numbers are very close. First 4 years of their career. Justin Jefferson, 392 receptions, 5,089 yards, 30 touchdowns. Randy Moss, first 4 years of his career. 308 receptions, 5,396 yards, 53 touchdowns. So Justin Jefferson, more yards and catches. Randy Moss, more touchdowns. I feel like Randy Moss dominated more, but what Jefferson is doing from just a pure production and amassing catches and yards, he had 1,800 yards in his third year, is pretty nuts. And he was injured last year, only started 9 games, played 10 games, still had 1,000 yards, and still didn't take him below where Randy Moss was. And so he's got Moss by 500 yards to start their career the first 5 years. And Randy Moss went 1,300, 1,400, 1,400, 1,200 in his first 4 years. So that's crazy what Justin Jefferson is doing. Moss was a cheat code, though. And the touchdowns is he's got him by 23 touchdowns. Moss does.
Yeah. I don't know if there's ever been a better touchdown scorer in the history of the league at the wide receiver position than Moss. I mean, so, we compared when Jefferson signed this, you brought it up that it was very similar in terms of cap percentage to Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, when they were at this stage too, who were just as good. I mean, they had started their careers at remarkable paces. I don't think anyone started their career better than Jefferson statistically, especially the top 3 years, as you mentioned, because year 4 was a little bit banged up. Not that it was bad, but the top 3 were the best ever in terms of catches and receptions and production, from what I understand. But they throw the ball more now than they did when Moss and even Larry and Calvin were around. I mean, it's not apples to oranges, but there is inflation involved. It's not quite the same. So I would lean towards Moss just because I think if I was Jefferson's lawyer on this, I would say, well, when Moss entered the league, they had Chris Carter as a number 1 receiver, and he was demanding a lot of attention. And Moss was the 2, which is hard to believe. Kind of. I mean, it didn't last long, but whenever he entered the league. But I think Moss was scarier. I mean, when we're comparing receivers, like that's why I think Tyreek's vastly underrated. When you can change the game and you petrify defensive coordinators because I can't stop him and he can get 7 anytime. It's like it's like Curry hitting 3-pointers from half court. Like, I don't know how to change this. I don't know how to defend this.
I would still lean Moss, but and Moss had one of the greatest starts ever, and maybe second best wide receiver ever, and that's what we're talking about with Justin Jefferson. So pretty unreal, and that's why he just got paid a lot of money and the most ever at that position. So next, we're going to talk rookie head coaches. Which rookie head coach is going to have the most success in 2024? Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. And sometimes you just need that check-in every week with a therapist. Make sure you are hitting the points in your life that you want to hit to go where you want to go in your life. And sometimes we all just need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. And certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. And you must, and again, I can't stress this enough, you cannot let the small thing become the big thing. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Therapy can be different for everyone, and this is designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule, entirely online. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. JDS, by the way, asked the questions about Moss versus Jefferson, the first 4 years of their careers for the Minnesota Vikings. And a question from Zach: which rookie, not retread, head coach will have the most success in 2024? If you had to pick now, which one will last? So we're talking rookie, first-time head coaches, not guys that are in their first year in a new situation that have already been head coaches before. So Raheem Morris doesn't count, for example.
Exactly. Okay, so there were 8 in case just to reiterate, people forget, there were 8 coach changes this year. That's a quarter of the league. Morris with Atlanta, Harbaugh with the Chargers, and Quinn with Washington don't count for this exercise. I'm going to count Pierce because he was an interim and he's kind of a halfie.
Yeah.
That leaves Pierce. That leaves Canales with Carolina. That leaves Mayo with the Patriots, Callahan with the Titans, and McDonald with Seattle. And of the new guys, if I was granted an NFL team and said you can pick from that new guy group, I would take McDonald. I think
I thought he stood out clearly over the
me too.
that you just brought up. And it's funny because even if we counted new coaches in new places, like Raheem Morris, I think would be a good choice and might be my choice. Harbaugh, it's funny because he adds Zach adds to his question. If you had to pick one now, which one will last? Well, I think Harbaugh will have success, but him lasting somewhere is another story too.
Not his specialty.
Good for 4 or 5 years and then gone. Like maybe that's what we expect from him. But yeah, I think McDonald's the best situation and the one that I would choose to have, and a good enough team to compete right away. So that's a good start. Like Canales, I don't trust what's going on over there, even though he seems like a bright young coach. Gerard Mayo is interesting.
Yeah.
The Belichick tree hasn't done great in the NFL. And now you've got those shoes to fill. It's almost like Mac Jones replacing Brady. You almost want to be the guy that replaces the guy. So I don't know if I love that, and a little ways to go on the roster, but again, a bright young coach. And so I don't expect him to not be successful either. It's just harder to choose some of these other guys over, I think, the situation and everything going on in Seattle with McDonald. I think that's where my money would go.
Me too. So of all the first timers, I think McDonald wins the most games this year. And I think he has the best chance 6 years from now from still being a head coach. And that's not easy to pull off. If you include everybody, all 8, I think Morris in Atlanta probably wins the most games this year. And part of that's because their schedule's easy in the division, et cetera.
And Morris could win the same amount of games as McDonald, and Morris get in the playoffs and McDonald not.
True. Yeah, they could both be 8 or 9 win teams, and Atlanta gets in. All right. Good point.
This is the most important question, and I had to make sure we got to this before we left, Matt, from James on Twitter. What are your favorite dinosaurs, and why is it the Ankylosaurus?
The Ankylosaurus is strong. The Ankylosaurus kind of has that like boulder at the end of its tail. It's kind of built like a turtle with big legs and protected real well. So T-Rex can't just leverage.
Yeah.
Hit on the rise. I think that's big. Velociraptors went up my list pretty quick in the Jurassic Park. T-Rex was always the champ.
Yeah, T-Rex. T-Rex is the original GOAT, and so I'm going to stay with it. He's the Jerry Rice of dinosaurs. So
yeah, it's pretty strong. If I really dug into it, I bet something from the sea would be my favorite. but there's not as much knowledge of those guys.
My son has this dinosaur bingo game that he was given for, his 4th birthday or something like that, 5th birthday. And we busted out this game. It's like, cool dinosaurs, There was like 100 different dinosaur names. I was like, what are these dinosaurs? I learned 6.
I knew like 10.
When I was a kid. Yeah, maybe 10 at the maximum. Even the Velociraptor when Jurassic Park came out, I was like, okay, this is a new one. We didn't learn about that. It was all about
Stegosaurus and Brontosaurus.
Stegosaurus. And
what's the flying one?
And so there's all these dinosaurs. I'm like, what is going on here? And his head, he hadn't even started learning about dinosaurs in school yet, so he didn't know what's going on. It's like, all right, I'm gonna have to shelf this game for a while. I got to do some research before I play this game, because I'm not going to remember what all these, remember what all these dinosaurs are. The second part of James' question, by the way, is, and why don't more people realize Mahomes is already the GOAT QB?
I do think Mahomes is the GOAT QB, and that seems disrespectful to Brady. It's not meant to be. Nobody will ever match Brady's resume, his lifetime resume, but I'd rather play against Brady than Mahomes.
There's multiple questions too, because where is Dan Marino on the list? CJ Stroud made some waves recently because he said he would choose Eli Manning over Aaron Rodgers because of the rings. So, what are we measuring?
I'm not in that boat.
I am not either.
Yeah.
Situation is important. And like Marino is one of the best arguments because he doesn't have a ring, but he was an all-time great. And would you choose Eli Manning over Marino if you're starting a franchise? I wouldn't.
Nope.
If I was starting a franchise, would I choose Mahomes over Brady? Yes, I would.
I would. But
I think with these conversations, you want to talk about the greatest of all time. I think you do have to wait. I think there's something to that. Randy Moss, we just talked about him, how he started his career. He's like, man, Randy Moss, greatest of all time. Well, hold on. Jerry Rice had an entire Hall of Fame career from the point in his life and his age when Randy Moss retired and was washed at early 30s, 31, 32. Randy Moss was done and washed. Jerry Rice, from his age 31 on, had a second Hall of Fame career to add to his already first Hall of Fame career. So I think
Brady might have 3 of them.
I think, right. So we have to, with these conversations, we want everything to happen now and immediate gratification society. Let's wait. Mahomes will probably be the GOAT, but it's disrespectful to the entire history of the game, and not only Tom Brady, but the Joe Montanas and John Elway or whoever else, right? Because there's a lot of talented guys that didn't win as much either. It's a great situation for Patrick Mahomes. I would choose to start him probably if I gun to my head. I had to choose one quarterback to start a franchise with all time, but there's more to it than that. Let's wait and see where that resume ends.
Again, I think resume is different than who's the better player. I mean, no one's going to beat Brady's resume. It's kind of like the Emmitt Smith conversation we had. Derrick Henry has to have 2 of these careers to reach Emmitt Smith. Does that mean Emmitt Smith's double as good as Henry? No,
My other part of this too is we throw that GOAT term. It stands for greatest of all time, right? Like, this is something you crown. You put the crown on the head and it stays there, right? There's too many GOATs of everything. You can't have that many GOATs. There's one GOAT, right? So
there's not an S on the end of it.
Yeah, let's chill out and let's stop making everybody the greatest of all time, and let's wait and let's think about it and be like, yep. And right now it's on Brady's head, and it was on Joe Montana's head, in my opinion, before that.
Me too. I agree with that.
Deservedly so. And let's wait before we take that crown off, because you can't start passing around like it's church candy. All right. I was talking this weekend to my brother about how when we go to church when we were kids, and like hoping you find that hard candy in the bottom of mom's purse to get you through the service.
I didn't know what you meant by church candy.
You're bored and you can't sit still. There's always like someone that's like passing a little bit of candy or something down the aisle. Like, here, that kid, kids getting restless at church. Here, hand him this piece of gum or something. That's how it was.
Next 5 minutes go a lot better with the sermon.
Exactly. Right. Like, we're almost done. Okay. Thanks everybody for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we love it even more when you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you listen to this podcast. Matt and I back tomorrow, right here, Peacock and Williamson.